Hello, everyone. Inside today's Locked On Canadiens, has Mattias Norlinder surpassed Justin Barron in the depth chart? Will Emil Heineman stick in the NHL? And who's going to be the first call-up from the Laval Rocket? All that and more inside today's show.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 925 of Locked On Canadiens. We are your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week, wherever you get your podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify, or here on youtube.com if you're watching us in a visual medium. And as always, thank you for making Laura and myself your first listen of the day every single day of the week. I am, of course, one of your hosts. I am Scott Metla, and I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba. And Laura, it was a quieter day after Toronto blew a 3-1 lead, which is an important thing to always note in here. How are we feeling going into the final gasps of the preseason here? There's one game left. There's a handful of cuts to make. We are in the home stretch. We are 8 days away from the Canadiens' home season opener, I should say.
Honestly, I know it's going to be a quiet few days based on the schedule and based on how many preseason games there are. Well, we say that, right? We're going to jinx ourselves to like 3 trades and like 4 waiver claims. And but I think it's making me more excited for the regular season. We're getting pretty close, and I know the Canadiens aren't expected to be world beaters this year, but I don't care. It's been a long off season, and I'm just excited to see them on the ice. I want to see Nick and Cole have fun. I want to see Kirby Dach continue to prove Kent Hughes right. I want to see what they do with Slafkovsky, whether they send him down or they leave him with the NHL. I want to see all of these things. I want to see if Caden Gooley is able to, be more durable this year, for lack of a better way to put it.
And it's funny that you mentioned defense, because that's the thing that's sticking in my mind, because there was some news today. It's not wholly unexpected the way things have gone. The Canadiens sent Logan Mailloux to the Laval Rocket, who are in the middle of their own training camp this week. That opened up yesterday on Monday, so he is now with the team there. And it leaves the competition for NHL spots for prospects, and it a little bit thinner now. None of us expected Mailloux, I think, to make the NHL outright this season. He played progressively better in the games, but there's still learning to be done. I think the Rocket are the right spot for that to happen. And the battle for one of those final spots is coming down to defenseman Mattias Norlinder and Justin Barron. There's obviously Gustav Lindstrom, Chris Weidman is injured, etc. But I look at the way the games have gone recently here, and based on how they trusted him in the last game, it feels like Mattias Norlinder, against, the expectations of many folks here, has kind of taken the inside track for one of those final defensive jobs. And I don't mean he's going to be an everyday player. I think he's going to be a rotating piece on this defensive group here. But I think his work on the power play, it has improved that in bits and pieces there. His save is along the blue line in the game against Toronto allowed them to set up what ended up being the game-tying goal from Josh Anderson, and the rest is history on that. I'm kind of surprised because Barron last year in the AHL, playing with Mattias Norlinder on the Rocket, Barron, after a slow start, looked like a much more polished piece. And at the NHL level, he put up decent points last year where Norlinder had struggled before. Admittedly, Dominique Ducharme could be held partially into that there. I am pleasantly surprised. You and I have both really liked Mattias Norlinder. We've had Patrick Bexell on the show to talk about him before he had come over from Sweden and playing here. And I'm really happy to see him kind of finding his game in the pro leagues in North America, because he kind of got pushed into a box, battled some injuries, and wasn't able to play his style. And he's not quite the free roving kid he was in Europe, but he's bringing some pace and offense from the backside. And I think he has the inside edge right now. And it's a really hard competition. And I imagine Justin Barron will be given a similar chance on Saturday against Ottawa in that game there. I'm just really happy to see that there be competition between prospects and not just, the NHL journeyman dudes, just dudes there. Like there's actual competition between prospective players in this.
So a couple of things about all the stuff you just said. The first thing is that I agree with you that Logan Mailloux, the best place for him right now is the AHL, playing as many minutes as they can give him, and for him to be able to get better at in-game on-ice decisions, in-game thinking. I like to call it in-game thinking. I don't know if that's an actual thing. Marty, call me and tell me if it is. But in the meantime, like if you had asked me even 3 weeks ago if this was even going to be a conversation about whether Norlinder should stay or Barron should stay, or whether the Canadiens had two choices at this point, like I would not have believed you. I think that one of the things that happened last season was Norlinder was more of an afterthought at the NHL level, right? He was doing fine in Laval, but he was never showing anything that lived up to our expectations of him from 2 seasons ago. And I think that the fact that he's been able to change that narrative is incredible. I don't think he lost his talent. I sometimes felt that maybe he lost his drive, really. It's not like he lost his talent. It's not like he lost even his work ethic. It just felt like he didn't really feel like trying to make the NHL anymore. And I don't know if that was just me. It's not like he was playing disinterested or anything. He just looked like he was lost and he wasn't interested in like Google mapping his way back.
He was put in a situation where he wasn't given the guidance he needed at that time. And I remember we watched the game and I wrote about this. They were playing the Penguins and the Canadiens, trailing a goal or two at the time, had a 5-on-3 power play. A perfect time for a player like Mattias Norlinder to show what he can do in that situation. And Dominique Ducharme had him stapled to the bench. They need a goal late in the game, and they're putting out, Joel Edmondson, etc. And when you're not giving guidance on what you actually need to be doing to change your game, to create opportunities, what do you learn to do in that situation? You just kind of regress to playing safe hockey and scared hockey because you don't want to make mistakes and be benched. We saw it with Michel Therrien and young players, a little bit with Claude Julien, etc. And last year in Laval, he had flashes, but he was still very, I don't want to say timid, but like timid, I think is the word that I'm looking for there. And this year, he's not flawless. We are not saying that he's magically going to become a top 4 defenseman. Like that's not the case. But he looks like he's unafraid to, take risks and try things. And in a season where the Canadiens are likely to be bad, an accepted fact at this point, it is positive to see him trying and making an impact in there. And we know defensemen take longer, goalies take longer, et cetera, than forwards. If this is him taking that next step, it's phenomenal timing. You can never have too many defensemen, infamous words, but also true. And it's just better in terminal competition. We said it yesterday, the iron sharpens iron. And I think this is good for him. And I also think if he does go back to the Rocket for whatever reason, he's going to be in a really good spot to make things happen right away.
Yeah, you can't argue with that. And for me, I feel like the Canadiens kind of have this luxury, but at the same time, like what I do worry about is one or other, because you saw Barron, for 2 seasons or a season and a bit. He was with the Montreal Canadiens. Like it feels like he's earned his spot. So it does sometimes feel like it's why is he still fighting for it? And I wonder if he ends up being the one who loses his way in that scenario. But last year you saw him get sent down. He didn't have an impressive preseason. He was still like battling through recovery from an injury, but then he made his way back. It was a slow and steady progression. And so I don't know necessarily that either choice would be damaging to either player, but at the end of the day, one of these players is going to get left out, and it could be one of the people to go in a package deal with, Army or someone.
And that's the thing is, it's like, who knows? Any number of things could happen. It could be Yessi alone, and it could be this guy, it could be that. We don't know. The last week or the next, I'm going to say week because opening night is the 10th, is going to be a little bit chaotic. And you know what? That suits us perfectly fine a little bit. The Canadiens have options, though. There's depth and quality depth at all positions, and some of that is in the young forward group here. We're going to talk about Emil Heineman, his preseason and everything, and that's all coming up in our next segment. But first, when you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish that you could do the same thing with your business team? And if you're building a roster to win the league, you're going to need Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. You don't need to spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. And you can find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. And if you hate waiting, Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches the job description the moment they sponsor a job post there. Honestly, I went through the whole job searching thing. Indeed was always great, helping me there and finding exactly what I was looking for. And Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. And that's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. It's just visit Indeed.com/locked-on to start hiring now. That is Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And indeed, the Canadiens have found some depth that they have lacked in the prospect pool for the first time in a while, it feels like. The Laval Rocket team is loaded with a mix of veterans who used to be, those NHL bottom six guys who would fill in, like the Elias Andersons, Philippe Mailloux, Mitchell Stevens, etc. And they've also supplemented it with talented bodies: Riley Kidney, Philip Machar, Joshua Waugh, Xavier Simoneau, Jared Davidson, etc. And one of the names they brought in last year for their stretch run to the Calder Cup playoffs was Emil Heineman, who came over from the SHL. He was part of that Tyler Toffoli deal that sent Toffoli to Calgary. And Heineman came in and in 11 games in the AHL put up 7 goals down the stretch there and was an absolute offensive monster to help get the Rocket into the playoffs. And this preseason, he has, it looks like, stuck out to many members of the Canadiens media who cover the team there. And they're highlighting his physicality, his willingness to bang along the boards and being involved on the forecheck, throwing the body around, and not the thing that I knew him for, which was scoring a ton of goals with a really wicked shot, which is something he did a lot last preseason and last year in the AHL. And I guess my question is, Laura, has he done enough this preseason in your eyes to hold an NHL roster spot over guys like Jesse Alonen, Michael Pezzetta, etc., at this moment right now?
It's hard because you look at who he's beating out, right? You look at people who have come to be, or somebody like Michael Pezzetta, for example, or even Jesse Ylönen from last season. You look at those guys and you're like, these people have done enough work to stay in the NHL. You know what I mean? They've done enough. They've made enough progress. They've done enough hard work. So here he comes, and is he ready to bump? I think personally, for me, they should start him this season and then see what happens going forward. And when he was first acquired, there are a lot of people that were kind of naysayers on Heineman, and they were saying he'll never play in the AHL. He'll always be a career AHLer, all of that. Like, I think you give him a shot, and I think he's done enough to earn that chance, but will he stay? I don't know.
And that's the thing for me, is that I look at Emil Heineman and I see he has added to his game. He is showing me a thing I didn't see too much in the AHL last year, is that he is willing to get into things physically there. And my original thought was, I don't think he's a guy suited for a fourth line role in the NHL. And I don't want him to just be a fourth liner in the NHL. I want to make that part clear. Even a modern NHL, I don't want a guy who's known for having, as Patrick Bexell put it, a shot that goes through people, not around people, is a key asset to have on this team here. I don't know if he's going to stick full time. I think he's done a pretty good job at keeping his spot. I really like Jesse Alonen on this team right now. And I think Heineman would be a very good piece to add to the Rocket, because they have a lot of playmaking wingers. Guys like Machar, Riley Kidney, Elias Anderson, etc. They have diverse players like Joshua who can do both, but giving them a true surefire trigger man, since Alex Belzile is gone, Anthony Richard is gone, Rafael Harvey Pinard is now called up. giving them a shooter and allowing him to continue to work all those other facets into his game is a big part of it. I think that he is, and we will talk about call-up options in our final segment a little bit here, but I think he's right on the cusp of being something that the Canadiens, not found money because they traded a beloved player for him, but I think he's done what he needs to in camp to stay on the radar of Martin St. Louis and Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, just like Mattias Norlinder has, just like a lot of other players has. Heineman kind of falls into that role, and I think just based on potential seniority and how the team works right now, Ylönen needs waivers to go down. I don't know if he would fully clear those waivers right now. There are teams that would like a young, skilled, speedy winger in that mold there who is killing penalties the other night against Toronto. I think that Heineman is a year off from being a full-time NHL player, but I do think he is going to get time this year. I just don't think he's going to be full-time until a few of these other contracts are potentially moved out and there is a space in that role directly for him right now.
Can't argue with that. And I think one of the things is that I do worry about, like, who's this team going to lose on waivers? Like, if you're another team, like, or if you're the Montreal Canadiens, you can't just like send people down. You need to try and package them with someone. Like, take this guy off my hands, take the salary or cap space or whatever off my hands, and here, you can have Ylönen. Because in the future, I don't know if he belongs. Like, he's a great complementary piece right now, but like, do I see him as part of the long-term core of the Montreal Canadiens? I feel like I could take or leave him. Am I underestimating him or his value?
I mean, like, here's the thing is I'm potentially biased because like I've covered him a lot in the AHL. Like, I've watched him come from Pelicans to the Laval Rocket in the COVID year where it was just the Canadian division to being, a guy who stayed in the NHL lineup and produced very well in a secondary role there. And they're in that stage that it's like you don't want to give up on a piece that is slightly older because they're just hitting that stride now when they've been cleaning up a mess. And if you're asking me right now, would I, trade Jesse Ylönen in a way to get Emil Heineman in the lineup? No, probably not. I think Ylönen has a lot of similar skills with a little bit more well-roundedness. But if it becomes, hey, if this also gets rid of Yoel Armia or another contract, would you do it? And then I got to think about it a little bit, because if you also get rid of Yoel Armia, that's another spot that you could have put Jesse Ylönen in this season in a more prominent role potentially, or fit Heineman in the lineup. It's a really like weird, narrow kind of tread to walk there a little bit. And everyone has their different opinions. Some people wouldn't trade Arbor Xhekaj if it meant they got a first round pick and a prospect for him right now. And other people would do it in a heartbeat. Some people don't want to trade Caden Primo. Some people do. Everyone has their different thought on that. And that's the hardest part of trying to figure out what makes the best Montreal Canadiens team here. And right now, I think that's with Jesse Ylönen in the lineup. But I do think Emil Heineman is not far off from also making that impact here. Before we move on, Laura, do you have any parting thoughts?
I don't know if there's any teams that would be willing to give up a lot of value for Caden Primo right now.
I mean, apparently the Canadiens think they would lose him on waivers. So who knows?
Let's see.
I guess that's exactly it. Is I guess, call their bluff. If that's true, figure it out. But then
okay, I've been really harsh with Caden Primo the last 2 episodes. I'm just saying that right now he's not living up to what we want him to live up to. That's all. I have nothing against him. He's just not doing it. He's not doing what he needs to do to solidify his place in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know. He's great in the AHL. Can't play to get the NHL. The NHL hasn't helped him out a lot. I guess that if we have someone who wants to give us a full goalie breakdown on what he can, what is wrong with him at the NHL level, please tell us. We'd love to read that out on this show at some point this week. We are going to transition to our final segment in just a moment. We're going to talk who are going to be the first call-up options so far based on what we've seen, and that's all coming up next. But first, snap into NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. right now. And if you've been thinking of joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action because it's safe, super easy to use. You can get paid out instantly when you bet on the spread, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL and us here at Locked On. And we are also here to remind you that if you do choose to bet on sports, please gamble responsibly. It is our final segment. We're going to be wrapping up the show here with the rosters pretty much set. You and I have talked about names we were disappointed to see going down to the AHL, names we're surprised are still here. And I know I have my thoughts on this. Laura, based on who is no longer with the Canadiens right now that has been sent down, any position whatsoever, who is at the top of your call-up list if and when, and I say when because it's the Montreal Canadiens, any sort of misfortune strikes this team?
I guess it depends on what kind of misfortune, to be honest. For me, it's tough. Like in any position, first of all, I don't think any goalies earned a shot. Like none of the goalies to me right now look even remotely consistent enough. Like if it's like somebody gets injured, just freaking toss a coin. Right?
Yeah, basically it's like,
Um,
it's we've jinxed the goalies now, so everyone can just blame us for when everything goes to hell in a handbasket.
You don't have to blame both of us. You could just blame me. It's fine. Don't blame Scott. Okay. For defense, honestly, like whichever ends up getting sent down between Norlinder and Barron. Like I don't want people like freaking out and yelling at me, but I don't think Logan Mailloux has done anything to earn himself a spot as the first call up on defense. He's not. He'll get called up eventually, but no. Like these two guys like have proven themselves more than enough, and they might not even get sent down. They might carry like an extra body and like sit them in the press box for a while. But to me, it's whoever gets sent to Laval out of Norlinder and Barron.
See, and the thing is, I would agree with that for the most part. It's just, it all depends on what kind of body they want. Because, like you said, maybe they keep Norlinder and Barron and something surprising. Maybe Lindstrom gets sent down. Maybe, Weidman gets waived, whatever. Out of the bodies that are there right now, I think that William Trudeau is the guy who is probably the closest to what they would want on their bottom pairing right now. He's a lot like Kovacevic in that he doesn't do a lot of flashy things. He just does everything right. But he's improved his skill and his skating so much that he is someone. And I'm kind of staking my hat on this is like my big prediction is he's going to play NHL games this year. I thought he's been really solid across the board since I've watched him, and he is right at the top of that list that you plug him in on any pairing and he's going to be fine. They trusted him with David Reinbacher. And I don't think it was they were trusting Reinbacher. They were trusting the guy who had played in North America for the last couple years here with that. And on all these pairings, Trudeau was the one that they were trusting with the leadership role, wearing the C, wearing the A, etc. in rookie games. And I think he is just right at that cusp of calling it up. On the forward side, Laura, who do you think is going to be that person should the Canadiens need fill-ins this season?
It depends obviously on the position, right? But to me, it's a toss-up between Méchard and Joshua Roy. And hear me out here. Like Joshua Roy seems to be the most obvious choice, right? Based on preseason, based on, how hard he's worked, based on the past couple of years. Like I feel like he's earned that spot. But Philippe Méchard has this, I think, this untapped dimension of play that we've only seen in little glimpses, and we didn't see very much of last year because he was playing on a terrible team that nobody even wanted to watch. So I think he, to me, is kind of like not a wild card, but like I would understand, like if you're telling me to bet on who they would call up, I think it would be Joshua Roy. But if you ask me who I want to see them call up, it would be Philippe Méchard because I know that Joshua Roy, like there'll be growing pains, but you don't have to worry about him. But I feel like the upside, the risk with Philippe Méchard is greater, but the upside might be even more creativity. They might be even more like there's like I said, there's this it's not untapped. Like he's got it there. It's just we haven't seen it. And I think that that's something that he would bring up. But again, at the same time, Joshua Roy feels like psychologically the more ready in terms of that. Like I feel like Philippe Méchard might have like he might not shrink in the moment, but he might have trouble adjusting to the moment, whereas Joshua Roy will not. But that's just me. That's just what I think, and I think it's largely based on Philip Méchar's previous season, right? This is where my bias is coming from, but I wanted to throw it out there where it's not as simple for me as just calling up Joshua Roy.
And that's the thing is, like, I like the idea of Philip Méchar and that I'm very excited to see what he does with the Rocket this year. I think he's got a great cast around him to get the most out of what he can do in this lineup here. There's a lot of skill. There's a lot of veteran savvy to help him adjust with the space, the timing, and just, general North American, pro level games. He played in Europe at a professional level, obviously went to junior here. And I think depending on how he gets started, he could very easily rise up that. I think Joshua Roy is very close to the top there. I think Xavier Simoneau is also in that spot. If they need someone to come into the bottom six and just be a nuisance, he's someone that has a professional game and an attitude about him. He's a feisty little pit bull out there. And I think that's exactly what they want alongside, Michael Pezzetta on that fourth line there. Just crash and bang bodies, be a nuisance, force turnovers, get the other team off their game. And I think Philippe Maillet, Elias Anderson, out of all those veterans there.
I forgot him.
It's because he's not really a prospect. And a lot of what we've talked about is prospects in this. I think he's someone who has done very well to impress in the preseason. The points haven't been there, but I thought he's played decently well, all things considered there. A really nice, plug and play bottom six piece if they need that on the wing. I think he has potential to be a nice little addition. He's not going to light the world on fire. He might at the AHL level, but I'm not asking him to do that at the NHL level. And I think he's a sneaky addition there. And I do think that, like you said, Philip Méchar he's my wild card because he could very easily turn it on and be like, well, maybe he is ready for the NHL very quickly. Or it could be like Nikita Scherbak. He needs just a little bit of time to adjust in there. But once he gets that timing and everything down, everything's going to start coming together very quickly for him. And unlike prospects in the past, they are surrounded by other good prospects and good veterans in roles. And I think that's such a crucial thing to have for the Rocket and the Canadiens and the Lions this season. There's so many bodies. There's prospects in the AHL going to go to the ECHL, etc. It's such a good time. We'd also love to hear who's on your top call-up list for defense and forwards. Is Heineman going to stick in the NHL? Would you pick Norlinder or Barron if you had to pick one or the other at this exact moment? Tweet us at @LO_Canadiens.
Also the goalies. Tell me which goalie you want to throw in there.
There's only two that they can pick who have NHL contracts. That's the thing. Like, tweet us at @LO_Canadiens on the app, formerly known as Twitter right now. You can also follow us there. Follow Laura at The Active Stick. Follow myself at Scott Mala. Subscribe wherever you get your daily podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever else. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We are trying to decide what we are doing for the next subscriber challenge. Some people want to see hot ones again. Some people want other challenges. Votes open on our Twitter page. Please go vote in the poll. Let us know your suggestions. We'll be back tomorrow night, and we will see you all next time.